Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Rosia and today I just wanted to sit down and share with you my experiences of being at a state comprehensive, a state grammar and a private school in the UK. Now, if you're not already familiar with the schooling system in the UK, essentially there's two main categories. One is state, which is funded by the government and going there is normally of no extra cost to your parents, and private school where most people have to pay or are essentially funded by their school to go there through scholarships or bursaries. I'm really lucky because I've got the opportunity to experience all three. And when I was younger, I used to be like, Mum, I want to write a book and I'm going to write a book about the differences between a private, a state and a grammar school. But now that I'm older, I've realised that that's probably not very likely, and I'd much rather just sit down and make a talking YouTube video about it. Now, I realise that this is quite a sensitive topic at the moment, especially due to the media and the perceived divide between state and private schools, but hopefully watching this you'll understand that my only intention by sharing this video online is to let people know of my personal experiences, and maybe it can be of benefit to you if you want to decide where to go to school in the future, or if you just want to hear someone else's story of what their educational experience is like. Now, I want to start from the very beginning, which is primary school, and since I was 4, I've been living in this house, in this room, and since I was 4 to 11 years old, I went to my local primary school. Let me know in the comments if you guys still talk to your primary school teachers, because I've lost contact with all of them, but they were so influential in my life, I just want to catch up with them. But is it weird? Like, is it even legal? Let me know if you know. When I was 11, in the UK, most people take this entrance exam called the 11 plus, and most people study a few months for it. It's like an IQ test. Once you reach a certain score, so for my county it was something like 121, you were automatically allowed to apply to grammar schools, and if you didn't reach the score then you can always appeal. Thing is, the higher your score, it doesn't deem how likely you are to get into grammar school. That whole thing is another system based on the location you live and the catchment area which you belong to. But I took tests, I travelled to the grammar school which was sort of nearest to my house, which was still 45 minutes away, and my friend and I took it together and we got the results, and I was really happy to know that I'd passed, luckily, thanks to God. And I was able to put down 2 or 3, I think, grammar school choices as my secondary school choices. There was 3 grammar schools which was most likely for me to go to. One was about half an hour's drive away from my house, and that was a mixed grammar school, and the other 2 were in the same area. One was mixed and one was all girls school. So I went to the open days, I got really excited about it and everything. I just really felt a strong urge to go to the girls school. You know when you just feel like you want to go somewhere and you just have that feeling that you belong there. It's like a gut feeling, you know. I had that feeling with the girls' school, so I was like, I'm gonna put that school down. Even though that was 45 minutes away, the school that was 30 minutes away from my house actually had a very strict catchment area, so I was less likely to get into the 30-minute away grammar school. So I just wanted to go to the girls' school anyway, and I put that down as my first choice. And luckily I was able to get a place there for September of 2013, I think. So I went after I graduated from primary school, and it was a really big shock to the system, because even though 45 minutes doesn't sound like a long time, when you are riding a school bus it takes absolutely ages. So I had to catch the bus at 7:02 a.m. in the morning every day. It's a very precise time, and I was always the first person to get on the bus, even though there was a stop before me which was at 7 a.m, but no one got on that stop, and I was the only person to get on at my stop. And because you know how the UK is like in the winter, it's really dark and gloomy in September when I started, and I had to walk about 10 minutes to get to the bus stop from my house anyway. So that meant starting from waking up probably 8:30 a.m. every day to get to primary school to waking up at 6:30 and going on a bus with complete strangers. It was so much fun though. I still have so many memories from my school bus, and I'm not saying that taking the bus and public transport to school is a bad idea, because you can certainly learn a lot of socialising skills. You can also make the most of your time by doing things such as listening to podcasts and making new friends and looking at flashcards maybe. In hindsight, I really would have rather used that time to sleep, because I'm someone who just really can't function very well without enough sleep. My mood gets completely affected when I'm sleep deprived. I remember just feeling so depressed when I was in year 7 when I started the grammar school. It was my personal feelings of being an over-dramatic 11-year-old, and nothing's changed. I'm still just as over-dramatic. I just cried every single day after I got back from school, and I would get back quite late. It was definitely after 5 every single day where I'd get back home. And I remember one day in the morning, some boys on my bus were throwing the chairs around, because it was a double-decker bus. They were throwing chairs around on the top layer and the bus driver couldn't see. The next day he was like, because you did that, I'm gonna pick up everyone late. So he actually did, and he picked us up like probably almost 2 hours later. So I only got back home after 7 maybe. That was a really funny day. It wasn't that funny at the time, but now that I think about it, it's quite funny. I have so many good memories from that school. I'm in no way saying that I regret going there, but as you will see in a few minutes, I do eventually leave that school as soon as I could. I have lots of lessons learned from that school too. I did get into trouble. I got a few detentions and isolation, but we won't get into that. And I've moved on, hopefully become more mature and more sensible with technology. That's why I am so cautious about making YouTube videos, because I'm always scared of saying something wrong and someone yeeting me for it. But hopefully I'm not saying anything offensive to anyone in this video, and if I do, then please call me out, because sometimes I just really don't have any common sense, and I'd really appreciate some constructive feedback on how to improve my emotional intelligence. Now, at that school, the academics was good, the teachers were so encouraging. I still remember the lessons that I was taught. I really vividly remember this one lesson when the science teacher was talking to us about independent and control variables in experiments. I don't know why that's so vivid in my memory. And I remember the house system, the different colours which we all wore. And I was actually elected as form captain of my year 7 class, which I was quite proud of actually, but then a few weeks later I actually left the school. In reality, I enjoy talking to my friends on the bus and dancing and learning languages. I've never learnt Spanish before, that was interesting. I think it was maybe just the fact that I really lost out on my sleep, and that just drove me insane and messed up all my emotions, coupled with the fact that it was an all-girls school. From my personal experience, I didn't particularly like the environment of an all-girls school. That's nothing to do with girls being annoying or bad, it's just that I feel like it's just less realistic and everything is just super dramatic, especially when you're at that age and completely impressionable to what everyone else around you is like. Yeah, that was a ride. At that time there was one other girl who also went to the same grammar school from my primary school as me, and I was talking to her one day and she was telling me how she was thinking of transferring schools to the local state school where most of our primary school friends all went to, because it was a feeder school for that secondary state school. She was finding it hard to adjust to with the bus and everything, and I completely agreed. I was like, wow, that's such a good idea. So I went home and I told my parents, and they were completely supportive, and I phoned up my friend who was also my friend from church, and she told me by some miraculous coincidence that there was a boy in her year group, in her year 7 class at the local secondary state school who just left. So obviously that opens up a space for someone to come and take it. Now it's usually not very easy to just transition schools in the middle of a school year, but you know, God was really good to me and he gave me that space, and I luckily was able to just, you know, yeet out of that grammar school. I loved the clubs there. It was really fun just watching the girls who are older than me thrive, and I was really impressed by everyone around me at that grammar school, and the teachers are so attentive and just made a lot of effort to look after you. But I really don't think it was for me in the long run, and I'm really lucky that I was able to have a space at the local state school really quickly. So it was really awkward because I just wrote a letter to my form tutor and my whole class saying sorry, I've left, and I basically didn't get the chance to say bye to them, which is really weird now that I think about it, but I've moved on, so it's fine. And then I started at my new school, which was just a comprehensive mixed state school. It's just the average, you know, UK school. I loved it there. It was probably some of the happiest almost 2 years of my life, from year 7 to the whole of year 8. And I remember my first day I almost cried because I got lost and I couldn't find my form, but yeah. And I really enjoyed my time there because I knew most people from my primary school and the teachers were so nice to me, and we were put in sets in that state school too, so you were also surrounded by people as equally driven and as ambitious as you. Generally there were so many different opportunities that I had at that school. I was able to go on a few school trips, do lots of badminton and music, and now that I think about it, it was so fulfilling, like especially with the limited resources that most state schools have. My school really did make a massive effort to make everyone feel included, and I remember every week going to eco club and looking at moths and taking part in school plays, orchestras, and just, you know, chilling and walking to school every day with a friend, coming back really early. So that was a really happy time, and I think one thing that you should consider when you are deciding about what school to go to is definitely the distance from which you live to that school, because obviously if you live really close you're going to have so much more time to do the things that you want at home rather than being stuck on a bus or a train, for instance. But then you also have to weigh that up with other pros and cons, definitely. But for me, being so close to school was definitely the right decision, and having friends at your school is also a factor to consider, but then also not a major factor, because being out of your comfort zone and not knowing everyone is such a valuable experience and will make you grow and mature and become stronger as a person. That was my experience at the state comprehensive school. In terms of academics, it was also very fulfilling and I was challenged a lot. They had this Aspire program where we'd stay after school on Fridays and do extension work, and I think the people there, the kids there, were also as equally as ambitious as the grammar school pupils. And now moving on to my experience with private school. I made a video already about the 10 things I'd wish I'd known before boarding school, so please go and check that out if you haven't already. And that was a really defining moment in my life, moving to boarding school, and it definitely has been so life-changing. But I feel like being in that school and being around totally different kinds of people really accelerated the way I saw the world and really expanded my vision and my goals for the future. So my experience at private school started when my piano teacher, who had been teaching me since I was 9, recommended me apply for some scholarship and bursary opportunities at that private school, which is about half an hour away from my house. It's mainly boarding, so it has lots of international students, but there are some like day pupils, and we do have Saturday school too, and most day pupils actually do come in on a Sunday as well for events such as chapel and other things. So if you'd like to know more about boarding school, feel free to send me a message or comment down. I'll try and reply to everyone, but I'll also make a video, a Q&A perhaps, on more things about what life is like at boarding school if you're curious. I'm so lucky that I was given the opportunity to be able to go to that school, even though at first, personally for me, it was a really big struggle because as a really weak 13-year-old, going to different residentials when I was younger, I'd always cry all the time because I was homesick. Even when I was 11 and going to a 2-week orchestra residential, I would just cry the whole time because I was just quite a sensitive child, and I feel like I still am quite sensitive, but less so, thankfully. I remember going to this new pupils weekend. It was for people who were gonna start at that boarding school in September for all of the year 9s, and we just had a weekend to stay at that school for 1 or 2 nights and to get to know everyone. Now that was a really embarrassing weekend for me because I just cried the whole time, and I didn't even cry subtly like at night or anything. It was like when we were in a circle, like talking with each other, I would just have tears streaming down my face, and it was just so embarrassing now that I think about it. But I was talking about this to my friends the other day and no one seemed to remember, so I guess that's a lesson for when you think something's embarrassing, maybe no one else is actually noticing. So yeah, I was just talking a lot to the year 13s instead of people who I was actually going to go to school with in my year because I was so upset. And I think now thinking about it in hindsight, I was mainly upset because I saw the people that I was going to be spending 5 years with, and no offence if you're any of those people, but I just saw the people and I thought, these people are so like different to the people that are at school with me usually back at home, and different in the sense that I felt that everyone was just a lot more confident and comfortable with themselves, and it was like I moved up 2 years. It was like they were 2 years older than me, even though most of them were actually younger than me because I'm quite old for my year group. And it was just a really fascinating experience because I was like, wow, these people seem so like popular and just out of my friendship league, and no one's gonna like me and they're all gonna think I'm so weird and I just am not gonna fit in. So, you know, tears were just streaming down my face, and I was like, that compounded by the fact that it was boarding school. I was gonna be boarding, and I just could not imagine myself being comfortable with being away from home for so long. And I really don't know how I got through it, but somehow I did. And I just remember in the first few weeks of going to that boarding school, I was walking back from lessons with my friend, well, with a girl from my house, and I was just crying. She was like, Rosia, is this school really that bad? And then I thought about it. I was like, really, it's not too bad. I'm getting fed, I'm getting educated, I have people around me. So I got my act together, and I'm really lucky because I feel like God always sent me the right people and the right situations when I needed it. In January the next year, but in the same academic year, my cousin from China also joined the boarding school. It was just nice having a family member there and knowing that I wasn't alone and going back home with someone and going back to school with someone. And it just made me feel a lot less isolated and, you know, more happy to be at the school and more comfortable. Honestly, in year 9, I mainly just lived in the music school. And in year 10, I also lived in the music school. In year 11, I lived in the art school because GCSE art takes a massive amount of time. Year 12, I mostly lived in the science block because it was like a study area but also a social area. And I also lived at home because of the coronavirus pandemic. We had to have online lessons. And personally, I'm actually like glad I got to stay at home because otherwise I would have just gone from boarding school straight to uni and I wouldn't have ever have had a really extended amount of time at home. But I'm glad I did get that time to be able to spend with my family. So that's one bright side of Corona which I saw personally. Another thing was year 13, I mainly lived in the library last term, and now I'm living at home because of lockdown again. And it has been a really wild ride. I might elaborate on my boarding school experience more in further videos, as I said previously, but my main difference that I observed from boarding school to state school was that generally people were much more mature, in the sense that they were more adulty and more open and more socializable, and also the fact that the academics were honestly quite similar. All the teachers in the schools which I had been to did care about our learning a lot and were willing to help me whenever I asked them for help. It was mainly the difference between the extracurriculars at that private school, which was they really emphasised that their students get involved in activities. So we had compulsory activities, and you'd get an alert or a punishment if you didn't go to your activities. So we had to go to sports or music or drama, the arts or volunteering every day after school and on Saturdays, and Sundays there'd always be some competition or activity to get involved with. So it was more like a whole person education rather than academic education, which you see more so at state schools. Honestly, my experience has been so amazing, even though personally I had struggled a lot, maybe because of a divide which I set in my own head from being different to everyone else, either by race or socio-economic background or whatever you call it. But in reality, like looking back on it now and seeing all this conflict between state and private schools shown in the media and discussions about, you know, widening access and the difference between state and private education, and the fact that exams are cancelled because the government sees the disparities, I realised that it really is mainly to do with you as a person that determines your future rather than what school you go to. Because what school you go to is just a small, like really small facet of who you are. And it is definitely like not in everyone's control. I know not everyone can decide what school they go to. It's dependent on so many different factors. What I wanted to mainly get across in this video, if there's nothing else that you remember, is that what really determines what your life is going to look like and how you're going to succeed is your inner character and your emotional intelligence and your ability to empathise with other people and to impact the lives of those around you, rather than the education that you've experienced or what sort of class or category or race or religion that you classify yourself as. It really is about your inner self and your personal character, which will get you far in life. IQ is so overrated. Like, you really don't need to be like conventionally clever to be successful in today's world. You could be successful doing anything really, but what you do need to be able to survive the harshness of life is the emotional intelligence and the character. If there's nothing else you remember, know that even though life is unfair, and it's always going to be unfair, and it's not only your type of school that determines it, it's just what you make out of your own personal situation that really matters, and that is really going to determine what you make out of this really amazing thing that we are all gifted with, which is life. So I don't really want to make this too philosophical because this is getting too deep for my Saturday brain after having Saturday online lessons. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening throughout, and I really hope that you're encouraged by this, and please comment down your experiences if you'd like to share them, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope that you have a really hopeful and a really great year. Bye!